On the 16th of July, 1950, 200,000 people packed into a stadium in Rio de Janeiro to watch Brazil win the World Cup. They were so certain of it that the newspapers had already printed the victory headlines. The band had rehearsed the celebration song. And then, with 11 minutes left, a single goal was scored, and 200,000 people fell completely, utterly silent. It's still remembered as the worst day in the history of Brazilian football. They call it the Maracanazo, and one man would spend the next 50 years being blamed for it. To understand the heartbreak, you have to understand the certainty. In 1950, Brazil hosted the World Cup and built the biggest stadium the world had ever seen to do it, the Maracanã. Their team was magnificent, tearing opponents apart on the way to the final round. And by that last match against little Uruguay, Brazil didn't even need to win. A simple draw would make them champions of the world. The whole country treated it as a formality, a party that had already been decided. Newspapers ran headlines calling Brazil champions before a single ball had been kicked. The match kicked off in front of the largest crowd ever to watch a game of football. And early in the second half, Brazil scored. The party erupted. The trophy was as good as theirs. But Uruguay hadn't read the script. They equalized, and the roar dropped to a murmur. Then, with about 11 minutes to go, a Uruguayan winger named Giggia slipped a shot past the Brazilian keeper at the near post. 2-1, Uruguay. And the Maracanã, 200,000 people, fell into a silence so complete that the Uruguayan players said it was terrifying. Years later, Giggia would put it perfectly. Only 3 people, he said, ever managed to silence the Maracanã: the Pope, Frank Sinatra, and him. What came next wasn't just disappointment. It was national grief. People wept openly in the streets. There were reports of fans collapsing in the stadium, even dying from the shock, though how many is impossible to know. Brazil had been so sure, and the fall was so total, that the wound cut right into the country's sense of itself. They even decided the shirt was cursed. Brazil had played that final in white, and they never wore white again. A few years later, they redesigned the kit entirely. And that is where the famous yellow shirt, the one you picture when you think of Brazil, actually came from. But the cruelest part of the story belongs to one man. The goalkeeper that day was Moacir Barbosa. The winning goal went in at his post, and Brazil decided it was his fault. Not the team's, his. Barbosa was one of the finest keepers in the world. He was also a black man, in a country that, in its grief, went looking for someone to blame, and it never forgave him. Decades later, he told the story of a woman pointing him out to her son in a shop. That's the man who made all of Brazil cry. He once said that in Brazil, the longest prison sentence is 30 years, but that he had been serving one for 50, for a crime he never committed. The blame was so total that for years afterward, Brazil was reluctant to pick black goalkeepers at all. One goal, one man's whole life, a shadow over an entire country. Brazil would go on to win 5 World Cups, more than any nation on earth. But ask a Brazilian of a certain age about 1950, and you'll watch the air change. Because the Maracanazo was never really about a football match. It was the day a nation that believed it could not lose discovered that it could, in front of 200,000 of its own people, in total silence. And one brilliant goalkeeper paid for it for the rest of his life. If you want the next file from the archive, you know where to find it. I'll see you there.